Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz at ClassicsToday.com, where I'm the executive editor, here to talk to you about boxes of Mozart piano concertos. That is, more or less complete sets. And I have, let me see, one, two, three, I have 7 of them here to discuss. There are more. There are always more. This is the classical record industry. There can't possibly be enough, can there? But I want to talk about the 7 sort of major established sets and their various pluses and minuses. And I've divided them into 2 categories. Category 1 is performances in which the pianist is also the conductor. And category 2, performances with a separate conductor. Now, I have to be honest and say, I tend to prefer performances with a separate conductor. Why? Because the concerto form, the classical concerto form, which was invented by Mozart. I mean, this is the guy who invented it. Let's not make any mistake about that. Requires that the form have 2 competing personalities or 2 cooperating personalities, the piano and the orchestra. And the better you can characterize each, the better the music is going to sound, right? Because these pieces are all about the interaction between the solo and the orchestra, between the piano and the ensemble, in every possible combination. The full orchestra versus the piano, bits of the orchestra, soloists within the orchestra, and the keyboard. You know, the very notion of concerto form, which begins with a long orchestral introduction or ritornello before the piano even comes in, presupposes that there's going to be a completely independent personality aside from the soloist. And so it's essential, in my view, that that personality be different from that of the soloist. Now, this doesn't mean that there are not great recordings with the soloist acting also as the conductor. It happens, and we're going to talk about some of them. But in general, and I'm speaking in gross generalities here, it's easier to pull the piece off, I think, and on the whole more successful when you have separate personalities. This is assuming that the conductor has a personality, which isn't always the case, and that the soloist has a personality, which isn't always the case. So, without further ado, let's start with soloists/conductors. The best known, historically, was this one, Géza with the Camerata Academica, the Salzburg Mozarteum. You know, there's this thing. Well, now, the problem with this set has always been that Anda is a wonderful pianist, and he plays very beautifully quite often, but the Camerata Academica at this stage in its life was not the greatest ensemble, nor was Anda the greatest conductor. So there are places where you just have to put up with not really great orchestral playing. And the problem, frankly, with the soloist as a conductor is that once the thing really gets going, it's one thing during the initial ritornello, right? Whenever the orchestra is alone and you've got several minutes before the soloist is going to come in. But then, once they really get moving, the soloist has to focus on playing the piano, not on doing this, you know, with the ensemble. And there are going to be moments where he's going to have a problem getting his hands down or getting his hands off in order to wave around. Now, most ensembles really can play this music. I mean, Mozart played from the keyboard, or he had assistance from his concertmaster, his first violin. They would have cooperated. You know, these pieces are not so difficult that a crack ensemble can't do them without a conductor at all. And they do it very well. But at that point, when Géza was making his cycle, and with that particular group, it wasn't so simple. And that sometimes shows up in the playing. And you should keep that in mind. Slightly more successful is Murray Perahia with the English Chamber Orchestra. Now, Perahia is a great pianist. His Mozart is always stylish and effective. These were not the most successfully engineered in their day. You know, they're in stereo. The sound is okay. It's good, but it's not as beautiful as it could be and later became with some other performances I can think of. But for the pianism, this is great Mozart playing. I don't think it's great Mozart conducting. The English Chamber Orchestra is always reliable. They're a crack ensemble. They don't make mistakes. Perahia doesn't make mistakes, but it could be more characterful in the accompaniments. It's that simple. But for Perahia, and if you're really going for the soloist above all, definitely worth hearing. However, my favorite for a soloist who is also a conductor is Rudolf Buchbinder with the Wiener Symphoniker. This is on Profil. This is a really beautifully recorded set. The sound is it's just luminous, and the orchestral playing is tremendously characterful, considering the fact that it's Buchbinder doing both. He seems to have no problem wearing both hats, and it's a very reasonably priced set. I would suggest very strongly that if you're interested in a soloist with conductor, that you consider Buchbinder. It's terrific. Now, all of these, just so you know, I mean, they don't come with, I don't think they come with the double and the triple concertos. Let me see. No, they don't. I don't see them here anyway. And you'd have to have another pianist or two to do those works. And also, the first four piano concertos are not by Mozart. They're arrangements of Mozart's of pianists by Schroeder, I think is the guy. So essentially, you're working with concertos 5 through 27 minus 2, which is 25 works. But now let's start talking about performances with solo and a conductor. Okay, Alfred Brendel with Neville Mariner and the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields. Now, Brendel. I got to get past the name. Brendel was a great pianist. He was a quirky pianist. I find his tone somewhat brittle. And I think he made better Mozart recordings with Charles Mackerras, who was a genius conductor, especially in classical repertoire. Mariner, as we all know, was always reliable and always just a touch bland. And so he is here. And for me, this is not one of my favorite sets. It's just not. For that reason, it just strikes me as kind of, good, decent, sensible, but never thrilling or really inspirational. And like I said, Brendel did better later in his career, and you don't need to get a whole box if you want to hear Brendel at his best. I have to tell you, when I was doing the Cannes Classical Awards at Midem, Brendel showed up one year, not to play the piano, but rather to read his own poetry. And I'm so sorry to say I missed it. Next, if you're looking for period instruments, and there's a good case to be made for them in this repertoire, you have Gardiner with Bilson. Now, here's the great irony of this set. It's very good. It really is. If you're looking for, the forte piano sounds like it's not horrible sounding, and Gardiner is a very, very fine accompanist. Say what you will about his work as a conductor all by himself, as an opera conductor and as a concerto conductor and choral music. Basically what he's doing is accompanying, and he's a very, very good accompanist. And he actually does give, because of the period instrument approach that he takes, the ensemble has plenty of personality, and Bilson is a very, very fine keyboard soloist. So this is really a very successful set. Now, one of the things that you have to that amazes me about this, I just find so fascinating, is that although it claims to be historically informed performance and all that, it has a conductor and a soloist. It's a completely modern approach to the music, because that's how the music sounds better, right? So anyway, worth having, and if period instruments are your thing, by all means, go for it. Next, conductor and orchestra, Mitsuko Uchida. She is a wonderful, wonderful, sensitive Mozart pianist, a little bit romantic, always poetic, full of soul. Her slow movements sing. They're so beautiful. And Jeffrey Tate in the English Chamber Orchestra, remember the same guys who Perahia had, I think are in better shape here than they were for Perahia, simply because there's a guy in charge. Now, Uchida has been doing another series of Mozart piano concertos for Decca with the Cleveland Orchestra, in which she is the conductor and the soloist. I like these better, I have to say. She's a little bit freer on those other recordings. She's getting, maybe a little bit more self-absorbed, like Big Surprise, how that sort of happens with soloists. But she's a magnificent musician and a great Mozartian, and this is a terrific set. However, my choice, my ultimate choice for piano with orchestra is, and this may not surprise you, Andras Schiff with Schiff and Végh. Now, if you were listening and watching these videos and you saw me talk about Végh's recording of the Mozart Divertimenti, then, on Capriccio, then you know what to expect. You will never hear the accompaniments better played than by Végh, and it's with Anda's group, the Camerata Academica Salzburg. But now, with Végh, who was a genius conductor, it's like they're transformed. It's a totally different world. And Schiff is just a beautiful, elegant Mozart player. He doesn't have the strongest personality among pianists. He doesn't come across as a virtuoso. He comes across truly as an equal partner with Végh and with the orchestra. And these performances, especially at number 17, I just, oh my God, the woodwinds are just, they're perking along and the pianist is just rippling underneath it. Oh, it's exceptional. It's just exceptional. Everything about these performances is alive and beautifully considered. Some prefer a pianist with a stronger interpretive profile. You might find that Uchida or Perahia or even Buchbinder have a bit more of that than Schiff does. But I just think if you want that collaborative approach in the Mozart piano concertos, that chamber-like give and take between the soloist and the various components of the orchestra, then this is the set to own. Do not hesitate for a moment. So, just to summarize very quickly, for pianist who is also the conductor, I go with Buchbinder on Profil. For piano and conductor separately, I go for Végh and Schiff on Decca. That's the way to go with big sets. Now, we will also be talking about individual performances of Mozart piano concerti in the decades to come. Hopefully, we will have much time to discuss them too. But until then, I wanted to give you something to get you going so that you can keep listening. Thank you.